Tonight, the deadly mass shooting at Florida State University, a grad student's chilling story of survival. Moments ago, a U.S. senator returned after meeting with a wrongly deported man in El Salvador, what he just revealed. And ABC News obtains the 911 call allegedly made by the suspect accused of firebombing the home of Pennsylvania's governor. First, the deadly shooting on the campus of FSU. The shooter opening fire, 2 people killed, 6 wounded. What we're learning now about the suspect, an FSU student and the stepson of a deputy hospitalized after being shot by police. His biological mother speaks to ABC News. What happened when she learned about the shooting? Tonight, one survivor describes the terror playing dead after being wounded and the moment she was afraid of being shot again. Faith Abubey reports from Florida State. Late today, Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen returning to the U.S. from El Salvador. His face-to-face meeting with the man mistakenly deported to a notorious prison there, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, says he was traumatized. What we're learning now about where he's been placed. President Trump defiant about not letting him return to the U.S. Rachel Scott is at the White House. Just a short time ago, ABC News obtained the disturbing 911 call about the arson attack targeting the home of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Authorities say the suspect called 911 himself, explaining why he did it. Tonight, federal authorities arresting a college student for allegedly firebombing a Tesla dealership while on spring break. Tracking severe storms over the holiday weekend from Texas to the Great Lakes. Multiple tornadoes reported across the Midwest. Heavy rain, flash flooding, damaging winds, and large hail through Easter. New developments in the Idaho college murders case. The judge delivers several key blows to Brian Kohberger's defense, including specific testimony from one of the survivors. The dramatic helicopter rescue, an injured hiker and a friend calling 911 from the mountain for help. And the 4-year-old hockey fan on the jumbotron, firing up the fans and cheering his team to a comeback win.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Lindsay Davis in for David. New details about the man mistakenly deported to El Salvador coming up in a moment. But we do begin tonight with new reporting on the deadly mass shooting at Florida State University. What we're now learning about the suspect accused of killing 2 people and wounding 6 others. The suspect is a 20-year-old FSU student and stepson of a sheriff's deputy. Police say he was armed with her former service weapon. The suspect was wounded by police and is said to be refusing to talk. His biological mother tells ABC News they initially thought he was one of the victims. Moments after those first shots were fired, some students ducking for cover under their desks, many running for their lives, sprinting across the campus to get to safety. Tonight, a vigil for the victims. One of the survivors describes in chilling detail how she played dead after being shot, then heard the gunman reloading, and she feared she'd be shot again. ABC's Faith Abubey leads us all from FSU.
Tonight, authorities giving their account of the final moments before a shooter unleashed a deadly rampage through the Florida State University campus, killing 2 people, endangering 6 others. Among the dead, Tiru Chaba, a father of 2, and Robert Morales, a former assistant football coach at nearby Leon High School. Authorities identifying Phoenix Eichner as the shooter, a stepson of a longtime local sheriff's deputy. Investigators say around 11 a.m. Thursday, Eichner drove into a campus parking garage and finally exited at 11:51 a.m. The first shot just moments later, between 11:56 and 11:57 a.m. By 12 noon, the shooter and law enforcement agents in a standoff. Investigators say officers shot him when he refused to drop his weapon. The suspect seen here being shackled to a stretcher in an ambulance. Authorities say he has refused to answer any of their questions. Police say the gun he allegedly used was his stepmother's previous service weapon. The suspect's biological mother telling ABC News at first they thought he was one of the students injured before being told he was the shooter.
Oh my gosh.
We met one of the victims, Madison Askins, in her hospital bed.
It's what my mom and dad always told me to do during an active shooter drill. Stay down, play dead.
Madison telling us that in that moment, all she wanted to do was reach for her phone and say goodbye to her parents.
I wanted to call my dad, tell him I loved him. So that was rough.
The suspect's stepmother, Leon County Sheriff's Deputy Jessica Eichner, was once Sheriff's Department Employee of the Month, now on a personal leave of absence. Her department reeling.
How disappointing is it to have this connection to this agency in this way?
Yeah, this is tough at any level, but to be personally impacted and to see how things unfolded on yesterday obviously is very disappointing.
The university honoring the victims in a vigil. Madison tells us she's grateful to the officer who found her and stayed by her side.
Somebody's going to show up. Somebody will be here soon. I just had to rely on another person, and the one who showed up, I'm glad she did.
And Lindsay, as for that suspect, authorities tell me that they're waiting for him to be officially discharged from the hospital before charging him. As you can imagine, Lindsay, he's facing various charges, including murder tonight. Investigators still digging for a motive and trying to figure out how that suspect allegedly accessed his stepmother's weapon. Lindsay.
Certainly important to understand both. Faith, thank you. We move on now to new developments. The White House showdown over an undocumented immigrant mistakenly deported to a prison in El Salvador. Just a short time ago, Senator Chris Van Hollen returned to the U.S. after meeting face-to-face with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The senator says Abrego Garcia was traumatized at the notorious prison there and has now been moved to a different facility. Today, President Trump lashing out at the senator for making the trip. ABC's Rachel Scott is at the White House.
Tonight, Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen arriving back in the United States, recounting his conversation with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the undocumented immigrant deported to that notorious prison in El Salvador because of an administrative error. In their meeting, Abrego Garcia wearing a baseball cap, shorts, and a button-down shirt, a far cry from this image, head shaved in prison whites, hustled into the prison known as Secot. He was placed in a cell with about 25 other prisoners at Secot.
He was traumatized by being at Secot and fearful of many of the prisoners in other cell blocks who called out to him and taunted him in various ways.
Van Hollen says their conversation was Abrego Garcia's first communication with anyone from the outside world since arriving in El Salvador on March 15th. Van Hollen tells me Salvadoran officials provided Abrego Garcia with no information and that the senator spoke with the country's vice president himself.
What did Abrego Garcia say that the officials in El Salvador told him about why he was sent to that prison and how long he would be there?
They haven't told him anything about why he was sent.
Or how long he would be there?
They didn't tell him anything about that. In fact, I asked the vice president exactly that question. You know, why is he here? Is he violating any laws in El Salvador? Do you have any proof that he's committed a crime? No. Why is he here? Because the Trump administration is paying us to keep him here.
President Trump insists Abrego Garcia is a violent gang member, though his family denies it, and he has no criminal convictions. President Trump today blasting Van Hollen as a grandstander.
Look, he's a fake. I know him. I know them all. They're all fake. And they have no interest in that prisoner. That prisoner's record is unbelievably bad.
Van Hollen firing back that Trump and his ally El Salvador's president Nayib Bukele are spreading lies, accusing Bukele of staging this photo of the meeting last night. 2 cocktail glasses conspicuously in the image Bukele posted on X, claiming the senator and Abrego Garcia were, quote, sipping margaritas.
When I first sat down with Kilmar, we just had glasses of water on the table. I think maybe some coffee. And as we were talking, one of the government people came over and deposited 2 other glasses on the table with ice, and I don't know if it was salt or sugar around the top, but they look like margaritas. And let me just be very clear, neither of us touched the drinks that were in front of us. Nobody drank any margaritas or sugar water or whatever it is. But this is a lesson into the lengths that President Bukele will do to deceive people about what's going on.
Senator Van Hollen says the bottom line is the administration is, quote, blatantly and flagrantly defying the Supreme Court, which has ordered them to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return to the United States.
This case is not just about one man. It's about protecting the constitutional rights of everybody who resides in the United States of America. If you deny the constitutional rights of one man, you threaten the constitutional rights and due process for everyone else in America.
Yes. Lindsay, tonight we've also learned that Abrego Garcia was recently moved out of that notorious prison in El Salvador to a different detention center. Van Hollen says the conditions there are better, but still no sign that he'll be released. Lindsay.
Rachel Scott from the White House, thank you. Late today, ABC News obtained the disturbing 911 call about the arson attack targeting Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. His home set on fire with his family inside. Authorities say the suspect called 911 himself to explain why he did it. Here's ABC's chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky.
Tonight, the chilling 911 call authorities say this man made moments after allegedly firebombing the home of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
Well, I don't really have an emergency. I would like to apologize.
In a level tone, police say accused arsonist Cody Balmer describes his motive for the attack on the first night of Passover.
Governor Josh Shapiro needs to know that Cody Balmer will not take part in his plans for what he wants to do to the Palestinian people. All he has is a banquet hall to clean up.
The caller branding Shapiro a monster, but then appearing to give himself up.
You all know where to find me. I'm not hiding, and I will confess to everything that I had done.
In an exclusive interview, ABC's George Stephanopoulos asked the governor whether this was a hate crime.
I recognize when you're in these positions of power, there are people out there that want to do you harm. I try not to be captive to the fear, and I try not to worry or think about why people want to do that harm.
Lindsay, that was the governor's first time back in that room. He told George how emotional he gets just thinking about it. The suspect's charged with terrorism, attempted murder. We'll see him back in court next week. Lindsay?
Aaron Katersky for us. Thank you. Tonight, federal authorities have arrested a college student for allegedly firebombing a Tesla dealership while on spring break. The Justice Department has threatened to treat attacks on Elon Musk's company as domestic terrorism. Here's ABC's Trevor Ault.
Tonight, this college student is under arrest, accused of firebombing 2 Tesla Cybertrucks in Kansas City, part of a rash of violence and vandalism aimed at the company owned by Trump ally Elon Musk. 19-year-old Owen McIntyre was on spring break last month when the FBI says he made a Molotov cocktail out of a vinegar bottle and a rag and threw it at a Tesla dealership. Investigators say these images show the suspect moments before that alleged arson. He's allegedly seen in this video running away seconds later. It's the second arrest this week for alleged crimes against Tesla, which became a target after Musk started leading the Trump administration's push to cut federal spending. McIntyre faces 1 count of unlawful possession of an unregistered destructive device and 1 count of malicious property damage by fire.
Lindsay, Attorney General Pam Bondi says anyone who still wants to firebomb a Tesla property will spend decades behind bars. Lindsay?
Trevor, thank you. Now to new developments in the Idaho college murders case. 4 students stabbed to death in an off-campus house. The judge delivering several setbacks to Bryan Kohberger's defense, including allowing specific testimony from one of the survivors. Here's ABC's chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman.
Tonight, the judge in the case against Bryan Kohberger largely siding with prosecutors in a string of rulings on what evidence will be allowed at his upcoming trial. Judge Stephen Hippler clearing the way for the state's expert who will testify Kohberger's DNA was found at the crime scene on a knife sheath like this one.
What does a knife sheath at a scene mean? That's going to be the ultimate question.
Prosecutors claiming Kohberger bought the knife and sheath on Amazon before he stabbed 4 college students to death near the University of Idaho.
This happened in our house. We don't know what.
As for that surviving roommate heard on that 911 call, the judge ruling her account of seeing a masked intruder with bushy eyebrows can be used at trial. The defense claimed it would bias the jury, but the judge called her descriptions remarkably consistent. Prosecutors want to show the jury Kohberger's eyebrows in this selfie that they say was taken just hours after the murders. Finally, that white Hyundai Elantra spotted on security cameras at and around the crime scene, the judge allowing a state expert to testify that it is the same make and model that Kohberger drove. And Lindsay, that judge also ruling that evidence of Kohberger's autism spectrum disorder can be used as part of his defense and to explain some of his more bizarre behavior, but only if Kohberger takes the stand himself. His lawyers, Lindsay, insist he's innocent.
Matt, our thanks to you. Tonight, the Trump administration is sending mixed signals about peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. Secretary of State Marco Rubio suggests the U.S. could move on if talks don't progress after repeatedly insisting he could stop the war in 24 hours, what President Trump is now saying. Here's ABC's chief international correspondent, James Longman.
Donald Trump once said he could broker a deal to stop the war in Ukraine in just 24 hours. Well, tonight, the U.S. is threatening to walk away from peace talks if a deal with Russia isn't reached now. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Paris for meetings with European leaders had this surprisingly blunt warning on Friday.
We need to figure out here now within a matter of days whether this is doable in the short term, because if it's not, then I think we're just going to move on.
The Trump White House first proposed a 30-day ceasefire back in March. Ukraine agreed, Russia did not. Trump then spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin in a more than 2-hour phone call. A different deal was proposed. It came and went, the fighting continued. This Russian drone strike in the city of Sumy killed one person and injured another just last night. But most of the pressure from the White House seems to have been placed on its supposed ally, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, particularly after that Oval Office shouting match.
You're gambling with World War III.
Tonight, the president pressed on whether Russia is serious about peace.
Do you think Russia's playing you?
No, nobody's playing me. I'm trying to help.
Lindsay, the bottom line is if the US does pull out of peace talks, that is a win for the Kremlin because Vladimir Putin's forces are advancing on the battlefield. Lindsay?
James Longman for us. Thank you. Overseas tonight, dozens killed in a massive U.S. airstrike targeting Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. The attacks aimed at a port in the northwestern part of the country. At least 75 people killed. The U.S. assault comes ahead of this weekend's nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran. When we come back, we're tracking severe storms for your holiday weekend. Tens of millions on alert. Lee Goldberg is standing by. And the daring helicopter rescue, an injured hiker and a friend calling 911 themselves from the top of a mountain. Next tonight, we're tracking severe storms over the holiday weekend from Texas to the Great Lakes. More than 50 million people on alert. Let's get right to meteorologist Lee Goldberg from our New York station, WABC. Lee, give us a sense how concerned you are about these storms.
Lindsay, the last thing we want to see is another slow-moving front over the middle of the country. That's what we have. On the eastern side of the front, it's a surge of summer. On the western side, it's winter with snow in the central Rockies. Severe weather from Abilene to Chicago tonight. That severe weather threat will start to shift south and east. By the way, tornado threat is enhanced over Oklahoma. The severe threat is near Dallas tomorrow. The flood threat is more enhanced from Texas up to Illinois, up to 6 inches of rain. By Easter Sunday, stormy over the middle of the country, dry on both coasts. It's cooler in the northeast again. Lindsay?
All right, Lee, thank you. When we come back, a daring helicopter rescue, an injured hiker and a friend called 911 from the top of a mountain. To the index, a dramatic rescue caught on camera. An injured hiker stranded, her friend calling 911 in the mountains east of Seattle. The sheriff's office sending help down for the hiker. She's secured and pulled up to the chopper with the rescuer. When we come back, the 4-year-old who sparked a comeback for an NHL team. Finally, the fan favorite 4-year-old who inspired a comeback. It was the third period at Honda Center. The Anaheim Ducks versus the Calgary Flames. The Ducks down 2 goals.
The noise you're hearing as they're showing up on the jumbotron, Anaheim fans and Calgary fans.
If enthusiasm were a person, 4-year-old Brandon York fits the bill. A Ducks fan projected on the jumbotron who turned all the frowns in the arena upside down. The momentum shift soon followed.
Gauthier scores to tie the game!
The Ducks went on to win 4-3 in overtime.
And the Ducks come all the way back!
The Ducks posting on Instagram, a special moment for 4-year-old Braden York turned into a rallying spark for our team. We brought him and his family down after our thrilling OT win Wednesday night to meet everyone.
How's it going? It's nice to meet you.
A high five for a high-flying 4-year-old getting to meet all his favorites up close. Braden given a hockey puck and some of the credit for inspiring the team.
I saw that during the game. They loved you. They loved you tonight. Yeah. You had the whole building on fire.
The new team hype man. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Lindsay Davis for David and all of us. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.